snappy, won't you? I have some very heavy thinking to do before 10 o'clock.
All right, here we go. Hey, Steve Smith.
Hello, Bret Starr.
I'm Bret Starr, founder and CEO of the Starr Conspiracy. He's Steve Smith, my business partner for 15 years. We'll talk about that today. This is Work Tech Weekly. Welcome to the show. Hi, Steve. What's going on?
It's just spring. Spring has sprung.
Beautiful
spring. Enjoying the warm weather.
Spring.
Allergies are killing me. So
worse every year.
Yep.
Well, I wanted to talk today about you and how amazing you are. Today is your 15-year anniversary with the Starr Conspiracy. And that, I would say, is 15 years in work tech, but it's actually longer than that. And I just wanted to spend time today talking about your accrued experience and observations after having been in the space for such a long time and now being such a weird time, the last 3 years being so weird, the things that you've learned, the things that you've done, but also just to express my appreciation. We've been through a lot of shit together, haven't we?
Yeah, a fair amount.
And
two recessions now. Actually, maybe three.
Who gets to go through 2 or 3 recessions with the same people?
Exactly.
What a privilege.
Lucky us.
Yeah. Well, I used to say when we first started that we actually worked together for a while before we started the partnership, but it was just really obvious that you and me and Kevin and Dan should be partners in the agency. And that's what happened in 2010. And never looked back. It's been amazing. But I always used to say, man, if the zombie apocalypse ever really happened, there's no one I'd rather face it with than you guys, not realizing that the zombie apocalypse was actually going to happen.
Yeah.
But, it turned out to be true. And I know that a lot of people found out a lot about the relationships, during the pandemic. And, there's all kinds of stories out there. You read it all the time. People reevaluating priorities, relationships, etc. But, for me, going through that experience together only proved to me that our partnership is strong, that our agency is strong. And I just really appreciate us spending all this time together.
Well, thank you, Bret. That's very nice.
Tell me, Steve. Well, it's on the script. I just read what's on the monitor here.
I'm Ron Burgundy.
So in order to put this all in context, we started working together a long time ago. So probably 2007, 2008, somewhere around in there. And tell us about your career in 30 seconds.
In 30 seconds, career has been this. Started off in daily newspapers in the world of newspaper journalism back when newspapers were a thing. Segued into internet startups during the .com boom. Learned about startup life, and then became an HR communications consultant and learned about the world of HR and technology. And then I came here, and now here I am.
Yeah, and we met because we were working on a political campaign together, helping someone run for city council here in Fort Worth.
You did a terrible job at it, but
as I always say, if you want 3% of the vote, Steve and I are your guys.
Yep. So, and I guess that's luck that we didn't end up getting pulled into the world of political consulting because, that would be terrible.
It seemed attractive at the time.
Yeah, it did, but,
So going back to your newspaper career, what did you cover? I want people to hear the story, especially people inside the Starr Conspiracy, because I don't think a lot of people, we hired a bunch of people over the last 2 or 3 years. I don't think everybody knows Steve Smith the way I know Steve Smith. And I just think some of this is so instructive about how you show up every day and who you are. And I want everybody out there to know, how all this was created, how you were created. And so what about, your newspaper career? What'd you do there?
I was in the world of sports journalism. So, did all manner of editing. Started off in the little tiny type, the box scores, the world of agate. Learned how to program a box score without actually having a graphical user interface. It's just numbers and tabs, and maybe it worked, maybe it didn't. So that was fun. And got into copy editing, and then became an assistant sports editor. And by the time I was all said and done, I was running a lot of the high school sports coverage at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, which in Texas, high school sports kind of a big deal. And looking back on it now, I think there were more people that were in my purview than are in the entire newsroom of the Star-Telegram these days. So it's kind of weird.
Yeah. And again, just to emphasize that point, because it's interesting to say that high school football is kind of a big deal, or high school sports are kind of a big deal in Texas, is like a crazy understanding. I mean, it's an industry. Yeah. You think about like Dave Campbell and, like folks like that who have put together entire, businesses and publications just tracking, Texas high school athletes and, that sort of thing. And you just see this, fevered pitch of interest in, no pun intended, in high school sports in Texas. I bet you got a lot of fan mail, good and bad, for what you covered and what you didn't cover in that job.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of strong opinions about who you cover and who you don't cover, and you certainly hear about it. You get an earful, as they say. And I mean, it's crazy because like in Texas, the high school stadiums are bigger than, like, the football stadiums are bigger than like college stadiums in most of the country. So it's just like you can go to any number of stadiums around the Dallas-Fort Worth area and they'll seat 18, 20,000 people. It's crazy.
Yeah. And that's, so I tell people, I'm prone to exaggeration, but sometimes I actually tell the truth. And, I grew up in South Texas and playing football. And I remember playing a game in Mission, Texas, which is not a big town, down in South Texas. The quarterback was a young Coy Detmer, who Ty Detmer and Coy Detmer became NFL players. Their father was Sonny Detmer. He was the coach. And during a non-district regular season game, there was like 25,000 people at the football game. And, that I didn't even think that was like unusual. That's just the way, high school football was down South Texas and apparently, everywhere in Texas. So it was a big deal. But the reason I love that part of your history is because, a lot of people out there who are listening to this or watching it, they hear your voice in the newsletter that comes out once a week, or they hear your voice in, the market studies that have been published, the brandscapes, or, the market, explorations of the different segments in work tech. And there's a level of academic professionalism that comes from somewhere. And a lot of people don't know where it comes from. But when you look at, and it's not just, that, because there's a whole history of quality content generation from the Starr Conspiracy that was instrumental in establishing and growing our brand over time. And I can remember back to when we had 10 employees, a long time ago. And the notion, I remember you standing up at one point and giving a speech about a typo being, the scarlet letter, and just the lack of acceptance around poor quality content, but also the strong sense of purpose around taking time to get it right and operating at a high professional standard is really baked into everything that we do because of you. And I guess because of what you learned as a journalist, or maybe that was just, an ethic that you took into journalism. But it's had a profound impact on who the Starr Conspiracy is. Well,
you're being over generous, I think. I don't think it's because of me, but I think it starts with having a quality orientation, and then, essentially hiring well. We've hired a lot of really great people who have a high standard of work excellence. And, you bring enough of those people together, it forms a critical mass and beautiful, excellent things happen.
Well, yes. And I think you're being a little bit modest because it wouldn't have happened unless you were here, because I remember getting in a fight with you one time. And I said, Steve, a CEO is not going to fire us for a damn typo in a thought leadership article. And you said, bullshit, they are. Bullshit, they are.
Was this after we had lunch at Benito's?
Who knows? There might have been a few margaritas consumed. But you were right. And, that attention to the standard of our work has frequently kept this agency above the commodity line. When you just think about, the world that we're in now, where certain things like, people will say, well, content is a commodity now. Well, not our fucking content, right? And why is that? Why will people continue to partner with us and hire us to develop, defining moment content, that really does play a role in changing the destiny of those organizations? It's because of the high professional standard that we have, which was created and has been maintained all these years, no matter how much you try to get out of, any particular workflow associated with content. There's no way that, poor content in anything that we do will be allowed to live for very long before you do something about it. So,
well, again, you're being over generous, but I think that, what is important is, over the last 15 years, content has become a commodity, but that's not the content we produce. I mean, people hire us because they want, excellent marquee content that really moves the needle on their brand, and so I think that, this is a world where if you want to outsource your content and just get a bunch of stuff for not a lot of money, you can do that. Now it's getting to a point where you can just plug it into Chat GPT or whatever and crank out a blog post. And it's just I still believe that brands are rewarded by commitment to quality content. And I'll quote our mutual friend, Mary Ellen Slater, who's also she's far better at content than I am. But one of the things that she says that I believe is absolutely true is that $50 blog posts don't sell $5 million SKUs of software. And they don't. And so you don't go out and buy a bunch of $50 blog posts and throw them up and expect, the world is going to come, beating a path to our door. But we have, a number of instances over the years of creating really excellent anchor pieces of content that have moved the needle, and so when, we have a conversation with a company like General Motors that said, we ended up buying, multi-millions of dollars worth of software from this company because of content that you produced, that's really validation for that.
Well, and I think it goes beyond that. All points well taken. It goes also, it speaks to exceptional talent and how exceptional talent can commodity proof or future proof your business. And so the whole world right now is scrambling about AI, right? Everyone's freaked out about AI. I'm not freaked out about AI. Look, I spend a lot of time investigating AI. I probably write 3 or 4 articles a week. I recently posted a great article on, a spiritual manifesto of a plant-based diet. I don't eat a plant-based diet. I don't care about the spiritual manifesto of plant-based diet unless you do. That's great. I'm not against it. But it produced some pretty compelling content, but it's not the kind of strategic content that can move you forward beyond the blocking and tackling world. When you start to view content or anything in your business as a cog in a machine, as just a piece of, blocking and tackling to the point where it becomes commoditized and you think you can just plug in AI or plug in this or plug in that or whatever and take out the exceptional talent from the equation, then you have lost your ability to respond to challenges in the marketplace that seem existential in nature.
Right.
And your exceptional talent and your ability to identify exceptional talent and to hold people to a standard of, people at the Starr Conspiracy care about excellent work. And we have exceptional talent here. Yes, I want to compliment you because you're the reason for a lot of that. But also I want to tell other people that, exceptional talent is the difference between success and failure. It's the difference between just getting by and thriving. And I would also say, look, the Starr Conspiracy is pretty fucking weird in a lot of different ways. The reason is because everyone here is exceptionally talented. And sometimes, a lot of time, almost all the time, you have to work with exceptionally talented people in a way that defies blocking and tackling, process-driven management, process-driven whatever, especially in a creative environment. And so I think it's, important for people to, think about that and just the impact that one person like you, 2 people, 5 people can have on your business, 10 people, all of them, to respect that, to build around it. And so moving on, clearly your experience in, journalism. And it wasn't just, it wasn't just about attention to quality. It wasn't just about, caring about, the content or the output. You also left the newspaper industry and you went into that beautiful bastard of a .com bubble. What did you see? I mean, that was a major career change, right?
Yeah, it was. And I mean, it's really funny looking back on it because, when you're living it in real time, it's just sort of like, you're in the fog, but, when you kind of look at it, with some perspective, it's easier to craft narrative at that point. And, at the time I remember thinking, this internet thing's probably going to be something. This is 1999. This internet thing, maybe I ought to do some work in it just so I kind of know what it's all about. That's, the kind of, way that, people thought back in the 1990s. So did that. And actually it all told, it was two .coms and gosh, a little under 18 months. And the lessons I learned coming out of that, are still lessons that I apply to this day. When you work in a startup, I have a lot of empathy for our startup clients because, it literally is you're painting the train while it's moving, and there's a lot of uncertainty, but it's just like, a lot of startups back in that time flamed out because they didn't have a clear revenue model. They didn't get product market fit. They didn't get the kind of traction that they needed. And so it's just like, when we're working with our startup clients, it's something that I take very seriously. You're really literally dealing with, someone's hopes and dreams, not just, their investment dollars. And so I've tried to, instill in our people that, that's an honor and a privilege, but it's also a responsibility. You have an obligation to do your best because these people are trusting you with something that is unbelievably important to them.
Well, think about it. Your career was really forged in disruption. Did it ever occur to you that you left a dying industry? That's what people used to say, right? That was the first thing to say, oh, the newspaper industry is a dying industry. You left that dying industry to go to work for the industry that killed the industry that you were in. Was that a dot-to-dot connection for you? Or were you like, I need to leave the newspaper industry and get into this technology thing? Or is it only in retrospect that you realize that it was part of a larger disruption? I mean, it was a new organizing principle, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I got lucky because I was not able to formulate those kind of conclusions based on what I was seeing. It's just that there was definitely a talent shift moving over to technology companies. And there was opportunity there for someone who was young and ambitious and wanted to build a career. And, when I left newspapers, it's crazy to think about, but the Star Telegram was a part of I guess it was Cap Cities, which was part of ABC, then Disney bought them, and then they sold to McClatchy. But there was all this stuff. But at the time I left, they were making something like 30% profit margins. And they had employment classifieds. They had real estate classifieds. They had automotive classifieds. It's just like the Sunday paper was that thick, and when you think about, the companies that were created out of that, just employment, you had like Monster and Career Builder built, giant brands coming out of that. You have automotive, any number of, cars.com, et cetera, real estate, Zillow, and, all of those. Yeah, it's just all of that was wrapped up in one industry. And that was really the high watermark for it. 10 years later, that industry had been completely decimated, and it's never coming back. So
no,
I got lucky in that regard.
Yeah. And so, the disruption happened. So, the .com revolution bubble, whatever, suddenly put a lot of industries at risk, but then gradually executed on that risk, meaning that there were a lot of companies who knew something, was changing and needed to, be addressed. But some of them made the changes and some of them didn't. And in some cases, it took 10 years. I mean, I remember even when we were starting to work together, there were clients that we worked with or business partners ever, like Bernard Hodis Group, who their entire recruitment marketing model was really tied to newspapers, placing job ads in newspapers. And then, if they had a really creative client, they might also place print ads in the same newspaper, right? And watching that transition into a job posting model of, write the job once and post it to multiple job boards. And some people make that transition, some people not, some companies not. And also that that wasn't the entire transition, right? That was just, kind of one component of it. A lot more change than that, but you saw some people embrace the disruption, and you saw some companies not embrace the disruption. And, now the story's told, and we're seeing that, play out again now, where the level of disruption is so significant. We talk about organizing principles all the time. What happened to you in the newspaper industry, going to the startup world, and how the turn that your career took and the turn that society took. We don't talk about the printed edition of the paper anymore. We talk about Facebook and Twitter, or as it was called this weekend, Titter, or, et cetera. An event of that scale, an event of the scale of the creation of the World Wide Web happened in 2020 with the pandemic. And the pandemic is reordering priorities in society and changing the way that we do everything. And some people are embracing that disruption, and some people are not. There are careers changing right now, just like your career changed during that moment of disruption. There are young people who are moving out of this and going into that in ways that are hard. They don't rise to the surface and make sense until 10 years later when you're looking back on it.
Yeah.
But one thing for certain is that history teaches us, our experience teaches us, that being on the wrong side of a tectonic shift doesn't end well. So how many people do you know who are still in the newspaper industry, and what are their lives like?
Yeah, a handful, not good.
Yeah, not being a dick. But it's like some people went, to where the puck was going, and, some people didn't. And you've seen that play out on an individual basis, on a group basis, on a society level, et cetera. And we're in that again now. And so I just see this picture of like your time spent as a journalist, your time spent in startups, kind of painting a picture of what has made you successful at the Starr Conspiracy and what's contributed to the Starr Conspiracy success. Focus on quality, making the right moves during periods of great disruption. A lot of times these things, I think, feel like accidents. But when you keep making the same accident over and over and it keeps working out, there's something else going on, right? And I think you've sharpened that sense of projecting into the future and of, getting at first a sense or a feeling of what may play out, and then really going that extra step to determine what's going to happen based on what you're observing in a way that I think only people who've had the kinds of experiences that you've had can do. And so you moved out of the .com world and you got into, I guess it wasn't really moving out of the .com world, but it was moving into kind of like HR benefits stuff. And that's where the bridge, eventually got created between your tech experience and what we were doing at the Starr Conspiracy. What were you doing in the HR benefits world?
It's just working for just a small boutique consultancy and, getting into doing sort of all manner of employee communication from, writing employee handbooks to doing, open enrollments and all of the, then paper materials around that. Special initiatives within a company, anything that they needed to communicate to employees. And what I was able to do is, working primarily, inside really large organizations like, Fortune 500 size organizations with HR teams, with brokers and consultants, got in real time the opportunity to see how, SaaS-based technology really began, hitting the ground in HR and communicating, like the rollout of the first online open enrollments, that kind of thing. And rolling out intranets and things of that nature. And just like taking all of this, communication that when I was starting out, you did open enrollment, you had to print all of the forms. I remember going to late night press checks and things like that, just to make sure that, the color was good and that the page wraps, all of that stuff, for open enrollment materials that were all paper-based. Fulfillment, sticking it into an envelope and making sure that the envelope with somebody's social security number is actually going to that person's address for 20,000 employees, 50,000 employees. And so, it's crazy to think about how that world has completely changed, and that, in a very short period of time.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I've always been in software marketing. When you talk about press checks, that's really funny because, being in software marketing in the 90s, for me really meant doing press checks, direct mail. My wife's father, Dale, worked a printing press. And they did a lot of our postcard mailers that we used to promote our software. And I'd go by and, do the press checks and have a beer with my father-in-law. That's just, you don't think about it. It seems oxymoronic to think about, working for a software company and marketing and going to do press checks for postcards. But, that's the way the world worked then. And so you got that level of exposure and experience into, benefits and HR and that sort of thing. We were working on a political campaign. We got drunk at the chat room. We started working together. The rest is history. But I do want to draw attention to just one more, kind of aspect of your influence on the Starr Conspiracy. When we talk about the Starr Conspiracy, and as I've talked about the Starr Conspiracy for decades, I said, look, we're a weird mashup of consultants and analysts and marketing people. I was just a marketing person. I was a direct mail person. I was, kind of when I started the agency a long time ago, it was really a direct marketing agency. And we were helping people with the digital transformation from things like direct mail and postcards and stuff like that into email marketing and that sort of thing. If I had not met you and if we had not worked together, we would not be a weird mashup of analysts and consultants and marketing professionals that really became the footprint of our organization, of what cements and constantly innovates our strategic value to clients because we're constantly watching the markets that we serve and help people succeed in, because your work ethic and your entire experience taught you early on, and it was imbued into the Starr Conspiracy, that you better know your shit. So you don't go out and market into a market without knowing everything about the market and, what makes people buy in that market and, how people are selling in it, et cetera. So the reason we are that weird mashup of analysts and consultants and marketing professionals, which has become such, a a desired position by agencies as agencies have faced, really difficult disruption over the last 10 years. And they're all trying to move to this model, but they have this legacy of being, kind of like a pure agency that kind of stands in their way. We never had that problem because we, from the very beginning, were these things up to the point where at one point you created and headed what we called the intelligence unit. And what describe the intelligence unit?
It was just a group in the organization, basically strategists and, content creators that was really just kind of focused on what was kind of the future of the industry going to be, producing thought leadership around that, and then, advising clients.
And how unusual was it at the time for a marketing firm to have a group of people like that?
Oh, really unusual. I mean, we had a lot of people, who became clients who initially were sort of confused by the fact that, hey, you do marketing, but you also do this other stuff. How does all of that kind of fit together? And, in our minds, it totally fit together. And I think that it's definitely, become integrated into the ethos of our company.
Yeah. To this day, I mean, we do our own brand studies and we track brand recognition, functional association, brand attributes. And there's still a lot of people out there who, because of the quality of the work that's done and the emphasis on thought leadership content that really matters. I mean, just think about that. Most of the stuff that we do could easily be brushed off as thought leadership content, right? Mm. But turns out it actually leads thought, and that's kind of the quality orientation that you have to bring to thought leadership initiatives. Our thought leadership content was so successful and has been so successful over time that people actually think that's what we do for a living. A lot of the times they think we're an analyst and they want to hire us to create analyst reports. And that's in my opinion, that's always a good problem to have when your thought leadership is so fucking good that people think that's what you do for a living. And when people are like using it and referencing it to actually like guide how they do shit. And what a great conversation to have to say, yeah, we are industry experts and that is really high quality analyst stuff. And we do know our shit, but here's what we sell over here. And the reason that we're able to do this really well is because of this stuff that we just give away for free. Yeah. I mean, it's probably like the most successful thought leadership, campaign I've ever seen. It only took like 15 years.
Yeah.
So it's a big deal. It's a big deal. But, tell me a little bit now. You've been doing this for a while. We've been doing it for a while together. What are your observations? What have you learned? 15 years, the Starr Conspiracy. You've been around on the planet for a while. What advice do you have to people? I'll kind of set you up here a little bit. A lot of my experience has been, same old song at a different tempo. You know what I mean? You start to see these patterns over time. If you just keep doing the same thing, but doing it in a way that works in the context that you're in as time changes and continuing to innovate, you do start seeing these, kind of patterns repeat themselves. So as a person who has, kind of stayed in the same area and observing the same sample, if you will, for a long time, which is a real privilege when you think about it from an intellectual perspective of being able to stay in one. It's almost academic in nature. It's almost like you're a tenured professor who's been able to study Hawthorne, for your entire career and watch how, the interpretation of Hawthorne has changed as different, classes, come through your university. What have you observed? I mean, what have you learned?
It's interesting. I think that, we have the advantage of working with so many companies and getting to see a company's entire life cycle play out from, newly minted startup to exit, and I think that, we've gone through, we're on like 4th or 5th generation of startups. And so it's weird when you get to see the iteration over and over again. It's just like, it's like time slows down, and a lot of the times change, the industry evolves, but a lot of the problems kind of stay the same. And, the things that people are wrestling with that they feel are, unique to them and no one has ever experienced. It's just like, no, everyone experiences these things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, part of just having, notched so many years in this industry, I think it gives you, I guess, some perspective about, how things are more similar than different.
Mm-hmm.
Back to you're talking about like pattern recognition and things like that, and seeing those same patterns repeat. We're in a period, as you pointed out in our conversation earlier, of intense disruption, and people are, rightfully, kind of freaked out a little bit about, oh no, people don't work out of offices anymore. Oh no, there's this AI thing that can replace any number of occupations. And I think it's important to have, some appreciation and respect for the fact that entire industries can vanish in a very short period of time, and
Mm-hmm.
probably will as because of some of these innovations. And, so you can't be afraid to reinvent, your business, reinvent yourself, and perhaps even radically so. And, you can be afraid of the change or you can embrace it. And I think that, what's clear is that, doesn't do you any good to be afraid of it. Your only real option is to embrace it.
Yeah. At the same time, I would say that, experience kind of gives you a different definition of short, what a short time is.
Yeah.
I mean, in the 90s, one of my first jobs in software was with a manufacturing software company. And the level of concern around robots replacing everyone was about the same as the level of artificial intelligence replacing everyone. Now, did robots replace everyone? No. Did robots replace a lot of jobs? Yes. Did it happen overnight? No. Are we still in the process of that happening? Yes. And did businesses who embraced that change, and when I say embraced, I mean make that change part of their strategy, not resist it, but build around it as an opportunity, did they do better than organizations that resisted it? Yes. And, it's going to be a very similar story with AI. And I think that's one of the things that, kind of experience gives you insight into, is that you can embrace a change and, move in that direction without changing everything, overnight. There's time to respond. And there's also time to figure out where the real is. We're in a very specific, cycle right now. You think about robots as, a very, apropos parallel that I never really thought of before. This notion that 1,000 tech leaders come out and say, put a 6-month hiatus on, artificial intelligence because it's dangerous and going to take over the world. That was the same shit that people were saying about robots. It was, it's like, don't give robots too much power. And I know a bunch of people are going to be listening to this right now and they're going to be like, yeah, but this time it's real. It's different. Now it's AI. If you put AI in the robots, then they can take over it's like, come on. So anyway, I just want to, thank you for the time, for everyone out there. I just want to, be real upfront about the fact that I totally surprised Steve with his topic today, intentionally. And so I really put him on the spot and I didn't really give him a choice. But Steve, I want to thank you for agreeing to it once I started down this path. And I also want to take the opportunity to express my love and appreciation and just amazement at what you have achieved for yourself, for us, what you continue to achieve. And, our purpose at the Starr Conspiracy is to create abundance. We want to create abundant employee experiences, abundant customer experiences, abundant shareholder experiences. And if you think back, which I know you're not a reflective person when it comes to your role in other people's success, but if you really think about the amount of abundance that you've created for people during your time at the Starr Conspiracy and other places, I think you'll come to the same conclusion that I have, which is you've changed hundreds of people's lives for the better. And you are definitely, one of the biggest reasons why the Starr Conspiracy is the Starr Conspiracy. And I wanted to say thank you on the occasion of your 15th year. 15th year. So happy anniversary.
Thank you very much. And thanks for the kind words. And thanks for, giving me the opportunity. I mean, you definitely believed in me and, took a chance on bringing me into the organization. And I mean, you made my career, you changed my life for the better. And I will always be grateful for that. And if the Starr Conspiracy has, created abundance for hundreds of people and has changed lots of people's lives for the better, I only played a small role in that. That really is all Bret Starr. But if I even played a small role, I am incredibly humbled and honored to have done that. So,
well, it's more than a small role, but we'll agree to disagree. All right. Well, okay. I love you, man. Thank you. And let's wrap this one. Let's wrap this one up. I got no fancy ending.
All right.